Good afternoon, everybody. Zach Ewing, Jim Derry with you. This is a Bayou Bets instant reaction video. Not one of our normal days to come to you, but a little special edition, a little 5-10 minutes on Zion Williamson speaking today at Pelicans headquarters on Airline Drive and saying all sorts of interesting stuff, Jim, about his absence, about his injury, about his possible return, the reason why it's been so long since he's been gone. I think those are song lyrics, actually.
Bad one.
And yeah, and it's a sad song out there at Airline Drive. I think number one takeaway for me, and you can read the story on NOLA.com. Christian Clark has it up. Zion says physically he is okay, but does not seem anywhere near a return. If you read between the lines, he says he does not. He'll be ready to return when he quote feels like Zion. So we both have kind of a take on this. Give me yours. Tell me your reaction is to this interview.
Well, unfortunately, it changes my opinion on this entire subject. I've been a defender of Zion's, even though I didn't think he would come back. I said back in January I didn't think he would come back. But I thought it was more on the organization, and I thought it was more of them being careful. And now we read through the lines and don't have to read through the lines anymore. Basically, it's Zion saying, it's me that doesn't want to come back. And to say, it's one thing if you say, I'm not physically ready to come back. But, I mean, this is the playoffs, man. Your team is hanging on by a thread. They lost Sunday, which puts them in the 9th spot. Now they got to win 2 instead of winning 1. Whereas if he would have been playing for any part of this stretch, maybe they wouldn't even have to play any of these games. Maybe they'd be in the playoffs. So the fact that he's coming out now and saying that I'm going to come back when I feel like Zion, well, God damn it, man, and I'm sorry, but you can't wait that long. I mean, no one can wait for you that long. So it's ridiculous. Again, it changes my entire opinion on the subject, and it really kind of ticks me off that I've defended him this long because, look, I'm not – it's hard to take out of one sentence. Maybe it's misconstrued. Maybe he didn't say it right. Maybe he's 22 or whatever it is. But, man, it's disheartening to hear someone come out and say, I'll come back when I feel like playing Zion. How about you come back because you're getting paid to come back?
Yeah, it's tough because I agree with you. I think there could be maybe some things taken out of context. I mean, if you've seen the video, Zion standing on the practice court, there's probably 15, 20 reporters around him. They're peppering him with questions. He's 22. Maybe he didn't respond with exactly the words he meant. And then the other part of this is I don't want to minimize mental health. Right. Like and if he has anxiety over returning over the injury, maybe this is not a physical issue. Maybe it's a mental health issue. And I don't want to minimize that. Maybe he needs to see a therapist. Maybe he is seeing a therapist. And maybe that is part of the recovery process. So I don't want to make that sound like he's quitting on the team or anything like that. But you're right. It does change some things. And, if it is a mental health issue, that's one thing. But when you're sitting here saying, I'm physically okay, and then the next minute you're saying, it's really difficult for me to be sitting on the sideline and I don't understand why people would think I want to be there. I can tell you why people think that, Zion. I can tell you why. Because you just said you're physically ready and yet you're not out there. Jim, when you said, like you said, the season's on the line. For instance, we have the odds at the bottom of the screen. Pelicans 5.5-point favorites tomorrow. They're expected to win and at least keep their season alive for a couple more days. They would either go to Minneapolis or to Los Angeles to play for the 8th seed if they win tomorrow. What would the odds be if Zion's playing in that game? How many points is he worth?
Oh, I got to think he's worth like 3, right? 4 maybe? Even?
Yeah, 8.5, 9.
I think not as much in this one particular game, but it changes their odds drastically as far as playoffs-wise go. I don't think it changes much, championship. They're not going to win the championship with or without Zion. Zion could come back fully healthy tomorrow, and it's not going to change their championship odds all that much because they're not going to win a championship this year. But a bigger question, and, we can talk about odds because I do want to talk about them, and I know we're only going to be on for a few minutes, but my biggest question, the first thing I thought, and look, first off, and I'm ADHD here, as someone who's had family members who have had major mental problems throughout my life, I've been around it. So I can understand that part, and I do sympathize. But, man, what do you think that his teammates are feeling if, they're out there busting their humps every day? Brandon Ingram came back from an injury, and he came back a little bit slower than we might have thought. But, he's going through a lot of things too. And he's out there going through everything every day. You look at guys like, C.J. McCollum is been a gamer all season, has had to do these things. So if you're a teammate and, what are you thinking? How does this affect you? And you got to think it affects him a little bit. And to me, it's interesting to see how Willie Green, he hasn't had a lot of controversy in his first 2 years as coach. Zion hasn't been around, but he hasn't had, things like what Minnesota is going through and Rudy Gobert throwing a punch, internal turmoil, I guess. But this, to me, if I'm a player and I'm sitting next to somebody and I've been busting my butt for the past 8-9 months, and I got a player saying, I'll come back when I feel like myself. Well, nobody feels like themselves in April. You start this thing back in October. It's April. You can't, you think Tom Brady ever said in January, you know what? I don't really feel like Tom Brady right now. I'm not going to play. That's absurd.
Yeah, and I also think, and it's a fair question. Listen, his teammates, his coaches, they know more than we do. We're getting a snippet. And so I do want to be fair and say, look, we don't know exactly. Maybe there is still 10% of this that's physical. But like we said on yesterday's Bayou Bets, myself and Spencer, look, if you re-injure a hamstring, okay, then you're done for the year. Well, guess what? The year's almost over anyway.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a long-term health issue from a hamstring. I guess I'll say this. I don't want to be unfair to the guy, but the most frustrating thing about all of this has been trying to figure out what the hell's going on, right? And
yeah.
and maybe I can't tell if this is the most honest moment of all of it, and said, look, I just can't get out there because I have a mental block, and maybe that's the most honest moment of all, and it's a mental health thing, and Zion needs to go get that taken care of, or if this just confuses the whole thing even more, right? Because if it's I don't feel like I can be Zion. I can't go 100% for that rebound or sprint down the court in transition because I might pull my hamstring again and I'm just not there yet. Well, how many times have you heard a football player say, or for that matter, a basketball, baseball, soccer player say, well, yeah, I think I'm okay, but until that first time I go out there and get hit, I'm not going to know.
Yeah.
Zion, you're probably not going to know until you get out there. We all know game speed's a different thing. If you're not going to go the same speed in practice as you do in a game, you're probably not going to know until you go out there for that first transition dunk. And then if it's okay, then you're going to feel like Zion, but you're not going to get there in practice. So to me, he's being honest, but still frustrating for an outsider to observe this.
Part of the problem, and you touched on it without going into it, part of the problem is this entire organization, and I'm talking about the Pelicans and the Saints put together because they're really one, has never been transparent about anything. They're never transparent. We never know what's going on. And maybe they think we don't have to know. But you know what? This would have been a lot easier and probably piss a lot fewer people off if they had just come out and said, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, or whenever, just been open and say about the whole thing. Don't tell me you're going to reevaluate in 2 weeks. So now we're seeing, and I guess I feel a little bit, I don't know if bad's the right word, but putting this all on the Saints and Pelicans medical staff when obviously it hasn't been all on them. But you know what? Tell me that. And I think the fans who pay the prices to watch this team and spend money on Bally Sports TV this year to watch Pelicans games and whatever they're spending money on, merchandise, whatever it might be, they owe it to them to tell them a little something. I'm not saying you got to open the book and tell them everything, but people have a right to know what's going on. They pay for these tickets. They pay for the TV, and that goes into your TV revenue fund and your merchandise. They deserve a right to know. And you know what? I'm pretty ticked off about it, the fact that we're just finding this out now. Again, it's an instant reaction, which means it could be an overreaction. But if what he's saying is, I'll come back when I'm ready, which is basically what he said, that's not acceptable. And I don't think it's acceptable to any fan out there, nor should it be.
Yeah, it's tough. And maybe the Pelicans are hamstrung. They give an update in 2 weeks because they really didn't know how long he was going to be gone because Zion.
Maybe they thought he was coming back a month ago.
Yeah, maybe Zion thought he was coming back a month ago. Again, I don't want to downplay what he's going through, but the fact of the matter is another frustrating update, maybe even more confusing than it was before. This has been a Bayou Bets Instant Reaction. Jim and I will both be in the Smoothie King Center tomorrow night. Speaking of spending money on going to see the game, so we'll see how the Pelicans look in person against the Thunder, and we will be back on Thursday for the regular edition of Bayou Bets at 4:00. Tune in. We'll talk that game. We'll talk Friday's game if there's one to talk about, and if there's not, hell, we'll talk NBA playoffs anyway, and do a Pelicans post-mortem. Also, plenty of NFL draft talk.
And Christian Clark will be on Datitude on Friday morning. So hopefully we're talking about a game. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't.
Yeah, we shall find out tomorrow night. So that's at 8:30. Pelicans favored. This has been a Bayou Bets Instant Reaction. Jim Derry and Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching, everybody.